Hey everybody, welcome to the guided assignment for chapter 23. This is flexible budgeting and variance analysis. And this is a company called I Love My Chocolate, and they make dark chocolate and light chocolate. And so what we're going to do is a little bit of a variance analysis. Up on the screen here, this is just all the data given to us in the problem. And I've actually copied this data over into Excel. Unfortunately, there was like no easy export. I just had to like type it all in there by hand. That's why I did it ahead of time, so you wouldn't have to watch me type it all in. I found that it was easier for me to keep the problem straight when I had all the data in my Excel spreadsheet. So we'll see if it works that way for you as well. So I'm just going to kind of jump into this. So if we look at how it's set up, they don't give us any example of structure or format. It just wants us to give the direct materials price variance, the direct materials quantity variance, and the total direct materials cost variance, and then the direct labor rate variance, direct labor time variance, and the total direct labor cost variance, and then fill this stuff in. So they don't give us a format, so we're just going to have to kind of do our own. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with kind of what I know, I guess. So I'm going to try to figure out my direct materials price variance. And the direct materials price variance is just actually any variance in my costs that comes about because of the difference between the actual price, or the price I actually paid for something, and the standard price, or the budgeted amount that I thought I was going to pay for it. Okay, so really to find the price variance, I'm just going to take my actual price. So, and I'm actually going to do this. I have two direct materials I'm dealing with, right? I have cocoa and sugar. So the actual price of my cocoa is right here, $7.33 per pound. And the actual price for my sugar is right here, $1.35 per pound. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare that to my standard price. And remember, standard price just means like a budgeted price, the amount that we set as our standard or our norm. Okay, so my standard price for a pound of cocoa is right here, $7.25. And my standard, excuse me, sorry. I don't know how that came through on the mic, so if it was really loud in your ear, I apologize. My standard price for a pound of sugar is $1.40. Oops, actually, I'm going to just use this. So the difference between my actual price and my standard price is my variance. Okay, so 733 minus 725 is 8 cents. And for the sugar is a negative 5 cents. So here's one thing that's a little confusing to people sometimes. Recognize that, so if my actual price, that I paid, was higher than my standard or budgeted price, then we're going to say that's an unfavorable variance. We paid more than we actually planned for. So unfavorable variances, when we're dealing with costs, come out as positives. And favorable variances, where our actual price was less than what we thought we were going to pay, they come out as negatives. That can be a little bit confusing. So there's our per unit price variance. So now to figure out our total price variance, we just have to multiply this by our actual quantity. Our actual quantity is right here where it says actual production in cases. I think. No, oh, you know what? But it's not just cases, right? Because we're dealing in pounds here. So what we've got to say is like cocoa. So this is a little confusing. Is that right? Let me think about that for a second. Actually, it's given to us right here. So the actual pounds purchased and used of cocoa and of sugar. So my actual quantity of cocoa is going to be right here. And my actual quantity of sugar is going to be right here. So my direct materials price variance is just going to be my variance per pound times my actual quantity in pounds. And there it will be. I'll do the same for sugar. So what we would say is that we have an $11,224 direct materials price variance. In other words, and it's unfavorable because it's positive. Okay, so what that means is we spent $11,224 more on cocoa than what we planned for, and that was due to the variance or the difference in the price between what we thought we were going to pay for cocoa, our standard price, and what we actually did pay. For sugar, we would say we have a favorable variance of $9,400. We spent $9,400 less on sugar than what we thought we were going to spend. And that's due to the fact that we planned on spending $1.40 per pound of sugar, but we only spent $1.35 per pound. So there's our direct materials price variance. To find the total direct materials price variance, we just do the sum of the direct materials price variance for each direct material, cocoa and sugar. So overall, we had a $1,824 unfavorable direct materials price variance. Or in other words, we spent $1,824 more than what we planned to spend. All right, so there's sort of the pattern of how we're going to do this. So next we're going to do our direct materials quantity variance. In other words, how much of our difference in cost for our direct materials is due to changes or differences in quantity. So we're going to start with our actual quantity. Actually, I put used, but it's the same as this number, which is given right here. So our actual quantity for cocoa is 140,300 pounds. And our actual quantity for sugar is 188,000 pounds. Then we're going to do our standard quantity. This is a little confusing. So this is going to be our standard quantity at our actual production. So our standard quantity times our actual production. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is we're going to say, okay, we need to know the standard quantity for cocoa, and that is going to be the number of pounds of cocoa per case times the actual number of cases for dark chocolate plus the standard amount of cocoa. Whoops, I should put that in parentheses. I'm sorry, yeah, standard amount of cocoa for light chocolate per case times the actual number of cases. So what we're saying is at the quantity that we actually produced, what would be the standard cost? Or I'm sorry, the standard, in this case, quantity used, okay? So we our standard then at 5,000 cases of dark chocolate and 10,000 cases of light chocolate, we would expect a quantity of 140,000 pounds of cocoa. Okay, we'll do the same thing for sugar. Our dark chocolate is 10 pounds per case times the total number of cases, which is 5,000. Our dark chocolate plus 14 pounds per case times the 10,000 cases of light chocolate. So that is our standard quantity at the actual production level. So the difference between that is going to be our variance. And of course, that variance is in pounds. Okay, so to convert that to dollars, now we're going to just multiply that by our standard price. Wait a minute, that seems off. Oh, that's because we're not doing that yet. I'm putting in the standard price. The standard price per pound of cocoa is right here, $7.25. And the standard price per pound of sugar is right here at $1.40 per pound. So now when we multiply that variance times the standard price, we'll get our direct materials quantity variance. So we would say we had an unfavorable direct materials quantity variance for cocoa of $2,175, meaning we spent $2,175 more dollars than planned. And then we had a favorable direct materials quantity variance for sugar, meaning we spent $2,800 less than we planned. And then our overall direct materials quantity variance is going to be a $625 favorable variance. So we're going to put this in here as a negative 625, call it favorable, and we can check because on guided assignments, we have unlimited checks. And then our total direct materials cost variance is just going to be the total of our direct materials price variance and our direct materials quantity variance. So we'll call this the total direct materials cost variance. It's $1,199. That's going to be unfavorable. In other words, we spent $1,199 more on direct materials than what we thought we were going to spend. Okay, that's what that means. Oops, I meant to say unfavorable. We spent more than we meant to. All right, so there's our direct materials variances. We're going to use a very similar process to figure out our direct labor variances. We'll start with the direct labor rate variance. So our direct labor rate variance, we'll start with, and we're going to do this a little bit different because our so with direct materials, we had to break it down by direct material. But for our direct labor, it's not broken down by the materials we put in, it's just broken down by the product. Okay, so this one will be dark chocolate, and this will be light chocolate. All right. So we'll start with our actual rate. Again, you see that pattern. Start with the actuals. So our actual labor rate, okay, our actual direct labor rate for dark chocolate. Let's see. Where was that at? Standard, actual price per pound, actual labor rate. There it is. So for dark chocolate, it's $15.25 a pound. And for light chocolate, it is $15.80 a pound. That's our actual labor rate, what it actually costs us. Now we'll compare that to our standard rate. And our standard rate is right up here, $15.50, actually for both. So what we planned for is that our direct labor was going to cost us $15.50, whether we were making dark chocolate or making light chocolate, it would be the same. Okay, so the difference between those two is our variance. So we have a 25 cent per direct labor hour favorable variance for dark chocolate, meaning we thought it was going to cost us $5.50. That was our plan, standard rate, but it actually only cost us $15.25. We have a 30-cent per hour unfavorable variance with light chocolate. Again, so that's in amount per hour. So to find our total, we're just going to multiply this times our actual time. All right. And our actual time is right here, actual labor hours used. So for dark chocolate, we use 2,360 labor hours. And for light chocolate, we use 6,120 labor hours. So our direct labor rate variance is just going to be the variance per hour times the actual number of hours. And so what we would say here is I had a $590 favorable variance for dark chocolate for my direct labor costs, and that is based on the pay rate. I planned on paying $15.50, but I was paying $15.25, so that saved me $590. But I also had an unfavorable direct labor rate variance for light chocolate based on the fact that I planned to pay $15.50 and I actually paid $15.80. So my overall direct labor rate variance then will be the sum of those two, and that's $1,246 unfavorable. So I spent $1,246 more than I planned on spending due to rate variance. Okay, now we're going to do our direct labor time variance. So again, we'll start with our actual time. And again, that actual time, we did it up here, remember, and we just pulled it from right here, actual labor hours used. So I'll say my actual time was 2,360 hours on dark chocolate and 6,120 hours on light chocolate. That's my actual time. Then I'm going to compare that to my standard time. And again, this is our standard time at our actual production, or how much time do we expect it will take given our actual production levels. So to do that, I'm just going to say this equals our standard labor rate of $15.50 times our actual, let's see, my standard labor hour, so my standard labor time is $15.50 per hour, and I'm only using a half an hour per case. So my standard, wait a minute, I think I'm messing this up, guys. Sorry, give me a moment to think here. I'm going to take, okay, so I got it figured out in my head. Sorry, it took me a minute. It takes a half an hour to make each case, and I produced my actual production was 5,000 cases. So that's it. That shouldn't be dollars, should it? Yeah, let's just take that to. All right, so that's the amount of time I would expect it would take to make 5,000 cases is 2,500. Same thing here. Sorry about that. I expect it's going to take 0.6 hours per case, and I actually made 10,000 cases. So I expect it's going to take me 6,000 hours to make those cases. So then my variance is my actual time minus my standard time. So I have 140 hours variance, and that's favorable. It took me 140 hours less than I thought. And then on the light chocolate, I have 120-hour unfavorable variance, meaning it took 120 hours more than what I thought. So to convert that from dollars then into hours, I'll multiply this by our standard rate. Our standard rate was $15.50, I believe. Yeah, standard labor rate. That's what we expect it's going to cost. So our, let's see, our direct labor time variance will be our variance times our standard rate. Why it didn't come out with dollars on that one, I don't know. So we would say we had a positive or favorable direct labor time, not positive, that's confusing. A favorable direct labor time variance. So we spent 2170 less than we did because we actually spent less time than we thought. We planned for 2,500 hours on that dark chocolate, but we only spent 2,360. And we had an $1,860 unfavorable variance on the light chocolate because it took us 120 hours more than what we planned for. Okay, so the sum of those two is our direct labor time variance, and that's $310 favorable, meaning we spent $310 less than what we planned to. And then to find our total direct labor cost variance, oops, we just take the sum of our direct labor rate variance and our direct labor time variance. We spent $936 more than we planned to, so that's unfavorable. Uh-oh, looks like I made a mistake. Oh, it wants it as a negative. There we go. Okay. Okay, so we're in pretty good shape. So now all we have to do is answer this last question. This variance analysis should be based on the blank amounts at blank volumes. The budget must flex with volume changes. If the blank volume is different from the planned volume, as it was in this case, then the budget, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I like to look at like what my choices are on each of these: actual, standard, actual, standard, actual, standard. Okay, so then I just sort of talk myself through it. So the variance analysis should be based on the blank amounts, the standard amounts at the blank or actual volumes, right? So that's why we did this standard time at the actual production level and standard quantity at the actual production level. So we're going to base our standard amounts at actual volumes. The budget must flex with the volume changes. If the blank volume is different from the planned volume, so if the actual volume is different from what we planned, as it was in this case, then the budget used for performance evaluation should reflect the change in direct materials and direct labor that will be required for the actual production. All right, so there you go. I hope that was helpful, and good luck with the rest of this week's assignments.